Foreshadowing is a story element found in a lot of popular franchises that pretty much gives like an indication of what's to come in the future. And the thing is, it's not usually explicitly stated, it's just given like little clues to help us decipher what's really gonna happen. Foreshadowing is a really interesting element used in stories, and Dragon Ball does have its fair share of foreshadowing. Now sure, Dragon Ball's foreshadowing may not be as precise as something like One Piece, and to be fair, a lot of Dragon Ball foreshadowing is quite coincidental. But I still do think it's interesting for a viewer who's watching Dragon Ball all the way to pretty much Dragon Ball GT/Super, it's really interesting to see some foreshadowing, whether it be coincidental or intentional. And that's what this video is for. My name is Ninja, let's talk about some Dragon Ball foreshadowing. One bit of Dragon Ball foreshadowing that's really interesting is in the beginning of the Buu saga, where Goten and Trunks enter the World Martial Arts Tournament. They already kind of bodied pretty much the whole child competition and stuff, so they want to go up to the next level and face off, pretty much in the regular tournament stuff. So they have to disguise themselves as Mighty Mask. Obviously, they can't just go in individually because they're little kids, so they have to kind of go in as one person stacked on top of each other. They're going in as one person facing off. They're actually doing fairly nice against 18. Ain't it kind of interesting that later in the arc, Goten and Trunks also become one person? They become Gotenks. It's quite interesting due to the fact that when Goten and Trunks become one person as Mighty Mask, that's really interesting how it's foreshadowing Goten and Trunks becoming one person as Gotenks. Good on you, Toriyama. Another bit of foreshadowing is in the Buu saga of Dragon Ball Z, but this time it's towards the end of Dragon Ball Z, and it kind of ties into Dragon Ball GT. At the end, when Goku's about to leave off with Oob and everything, Vegeta says to Goku at the end of the Z,
"Not here. When we fight, we'll need a whole planet for an arena."
And it's actually really interesting to see what Vegeta says here. Here it may not seem like much, it's just like a friendly little rivalry thing. And for someone who read the manga and not caught up with Z, this might not make any sense. It's probably going to be off-scene. Well, Vegeta did actually foreshadow with this unintentionally in later words in Dragon Ball GT when Vegeta got possessed by Baby, they fought on planet Tuffle. They needed a whole planet for Goku Super Saiyan 4 and Baby Vegeta to fight. It was really interesting how Vegeta notes that they needed a whole planet, and guess what? They actually did. Now, the next bit of foreshadowing goes back to the Saiyan saga of Dragon Ball Z. During the battle with the Saiyans, Piccolo tries to grab Nappa's tail just to hope the same strategy worked for Raditz, but guess what? It didn't work, and essentially Piccolo got bodied. Sorry, Quaman. Piccolo was unconscious for a little bit, and pretty much they had to work around him, and they all believed him to be dead. But guess what? He was indeed alive, after all. A few episodes later, we see Gohan about to die thanks to Nappa's extremely powerful blast, but Piccolo comes in and sacrifices himself. The difference is between the last time, this time Piccolo actually died, and I think that little unconscious bit may not have seemed like much, but it's actually interesting foreshadowing to see what actually happened with him actually dying a few episodes later. Quite interesting, don't you say? The next bit of Dragon Ball foreshadowing goes next to the Frieza saga, and the battle between the Z Fighters and second form Frieza. At the very beginning when Frieza first transformed and people are extremely horrified of it, he charges into Dende immediately because he's kind of found the whole strategy of Dende just healing them and everything. So he tries to go for Dende, but guess what? Krillin just charges in, saving Dende's life, and guess what? Krillin gets stabbed near to death. This is a very, very brutal moment, and we see Krillin nearly on the verge of dying, and had it not have been for Dende, he would have died here. Luckily, he came back and was able to hold off a little bit longer, until later in this arc, right after they, quote, defeated Frieza with the Spirit Bomb. Yeah, Frieza comes back and kills Krillin, but the difference is, this time, he's actually able to kill Krillin. So I think it was quite interesting that little stabbing moment with Krillin on when he was on the verge of dying was actually foreshadowing his actual death later in the arc. This is quite similar to Piccolo's one from the Saiyan saga, and it's an interesting little detail that not many people seem to note. My next moment has to be in the next arc where it's kind of like the Future Trunks / Androids arc. It has to be the appearance of Mecha Frieza. After Frieza was defeated, he was able to recover his body into a new mechanical form thanks to his father and everything like that. When Frieza comes back, he has a whole cyborg mechanical body and everything. It's quite interesting, but even though he gets completely sliced up by Trunks, this bit of foreshadowing, not many people seem to pay attention to Mecha Frieza, because later word, it foreshadows what happens later with the androids. And two of the, quote, androids 17 and 18, they're cyborgs. Hey, wasn't Frieza a cyborg? It's quite interesting that Frieza's mechanical body really did do some interesting foreshadowing towards the cyborgs and androids. Wasn't that pretty clever? Now, many people seem to overlook this whole Mecha Frieza moment, but it actually indicated what would happen later in this arc. It's quite interesting, wouldn't you say? Now, my final bit of Dragon Ball foreshadowing has to be in, again, back to the Saiyan saga, but this time it's really early at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, and this doesn't per se foreshadow a certain moment specifically, but for a series of moments which happen later. As we see see when Goku and Piccolo are getting ganged up by Raditz, that's when Gohan just comes out of the space pod. He charges into Raditz, temporarily damaging him for a little bit and distracting him. It's quite interesting to see this is kind of our first indication of the fact that Gohan had some serious potential. And now later words we see this in the Saiyan saga with the whole Masenko thing, in the Frieza saga showing when he had the unlocked potential. It also foreshadows Gohan's rage moment in the Frieza saga when he's going up against Frieza and just goes all in because of his emotions getting to him. Ultimately, these little bits of foreshadowing add up to the Cell Saga where Gohan loses it all and becomes a Super Saiyan 2, the first ever of its kind. This is where we see Gohan has always had this potential, always building up, and he's finally letting it all loose. This bit of foreshadowing was building up throughout the series, and boy oh boy was it really interesting. So guys, that's just been my discussion for today, talking about some Dragon Ball foreshadowing that I think is very notable and quite interesting. What do you guys think are some really good examples of Dragon Ball foreshadowing? I want to hear everyone's input in the comments down below. But anyways guys, thanks so much for watching. Ninja out. Peace everybody. Anyway guys, before I end off the video real quick, I want to say something real quick. Obviously, there's a ton more Dragon Ball foreshadowing, but I just thought of some ones that came to mind when making this video. And if you want, there's actually a fair amount of foreshadowing in the Future Trunks arc of Dragon Ball Super, and my good buddy MJ over at GeekListTV made a whole video just talking about the foreshadowing of the Future Trunks arc. So check it out and have a good day.